And our first speaker is Martyna Lagoda, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at the Western College of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Saskatchewan, and she will be talking about play behavior in pigs.
Perfect. Thanks for that introduction, and hi everyone. It's great to be here. And yes, I'm staying on topic of temperament, but now moving to pigs. So I will be discussing the effect of coping style and early life environment on the expression of play behavior in suckling pigs. So just to give a little bit of background, that early postnatal period in pigs, so from birth to about 12 weeks of age, is really marked by quite rapid behavioral development. And it's really linked to the plasticity of the pig's brain that we see at that point. So at that point, the environmental inputs, so the cues in terms of like sensory sort of cues and stimuli, social enrichment, so that could be coming from conspecifics or even the quality of human-animal interactions, are really important, and they all come together as that sort of cognitive stimulation and those opportunities to develop social skills for the pigs that act on that plastic brain and help them develop those behaviors. And those behaviors have a genetic basis to them, so they are linked to how pigs evolved in the wild, so they are seen in the wild boar ancestors of pigs. And because they are so crucial to the pig's survival and so important to their functioning throughout life, they are still displayed in our domestic pigs that we have in intensive farming systems. So we can't breed against them, and we really do need to support the correct development of those behaviors early on. So one example of those early life behaviors that we see develop is play behavior. And so play behavior in pigs, as for many other species, it's a natural, highly motivated behavior that really peaks between 2 to 6 weeks of age. And the expression of play really supports in pigs the development of social skills, their learning abilities, and also their adaptability and then stress coping ability later in life so that they can deal with challenges. And it also helps them in novel situations and when they meet novel objects and novel people in their environments, that does reduce their neophobia. So overall, the expression of play behavior helps pigs to prepare for stressful events later in life, and weaning can be one example here. It's also a very rewarding behavior that's now clearly linked to positive emotions. We have a lot of studies showing that in terms of psychological aspects and also physiological factors. So it does support overall good welfare in pigs. That's why it's very important to encourage the expression of this behavior, and failure to support it early on can really have long-term consequences. So we would see detrimental effects for behavior and reactivity later in life, stress coping ability, and also the immunity of the animal. So resilience to disease will be affected, and so that will play into their health, productivity, and welfare. So there are different types of play behavior, and because of that, we are able to stimulate the environment that the pigs are in to be able to trigger different types of play. So, for example, for object play, very obviously, we can provide the pigs with species-appropriate enrichment to trigger that type of behavior. Locomotor play, here provision of extra space is very useful for them, just so they have the space to actually express that behavior. And then social behavior, if we provide them with opportunities, so conspecifics that they can interact with, or even humans as well, that does come into play, then that would help them express social play behavior. And for social play behavior, space is also important, just so that they are confident and comfortable in their surroundings to actually properly express that behavior. So we know quite a lot about how the environment influences play behavior and what we need to do to support that, but we know less about the effect of personality or coping style here. So we know that across different species, the individual animals tend to deviate into different types of personalities. So the two that sort of come out are usually passive, so reactive animals, or proactive animals. And we really don't understand the effect of the personality on play expression. So this is what we're trying to explore in this study, because if we can understand that gap here, we could possibly gain more ability to support different personality types to express play behavior in different environments. And so in a way, cater to all different personalities by knowing how to influence their environment based on their personality type. So that was basically the objective of this work, to determine whether piglets with opposing personalities express different levels of play behavior and also aggression, and whether this depends on their environment. So in terms of the study design, we had 3 batches of 10 litters, so quite a preliminary study. And these piglets were observed in their pre-weaning stage. And they were raised in conventional farrowing pens. So we had 2 litters per batch assigned to one of 5 treatments. And the treatments were, so what you see first one here is the commingling treatment. So here basically 2 farrowing pens were able to come together, and the piglets were able to interact with their neighbors. And we simply did that by removing the divider between the 2 pens. So it's important to note that in this treatment, there was also extra space, obviously, since they had 2 farrowing crates that they could use. The extra space treatment then had 6 meters squared compared to the standard 4.35 meters squared. And then the straw treatment, here we provided fresh straw daily on a cat-like litter box mat. In the toy treatment, we had a rotation of 3 chewable plastic toys. So they were actually dog toys that we used, and they were switched weekly to renew that novelty to those objects. And then the control treatment just had a standard rearing environment, and the piglets here also had enrichment that is standard for those pens, so a piece of chain, or sometimes they were also able to interact with some of the enrichments that was provided for the sow, so that might have been burlap. In terms of measuring the actual personalities of the piglets, so we used the back test, which is very commonly used in pigs for this. So we tested those pigs when they were 18 days of age. And we did this by holding them on their back for 1 minute, and then we recorded the number of escape attempts and also the number of high-pitched vocalizations. And those were then used, as you see in the table here, that's our scoring system. So that's how we split them into the proactive, so the high responder type pigs, and the passive low responder type pigs. We also observed their behavior so that we could see the aggression and the play behavior. So this was done by filming those litters from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. On day 5, 10, 15, 20, and 24. And we selected periods to analyze based on when the pigs were actually active, because there were a lot of periods where they were not active. So we selected 6 30-minute periods per each day where we observed that aggression and play behavior. And to be more specific, in terms of play behavior, we looked at object, social, and locomotor play. And so those, the frequency of these behaviors were summed across all of the observation days to produce a total frequency for each behavior. All of our analysis were performed in Stata 18, and we used generalized linear mixed models with a Poisson distribution because we didn't meet the normality assumptions. So in terms of the results, just giving you some descriptives first. So we have 499 piglets, and 45% of them were female, 55% were male. So we did include sex in our models because it does influence personality. And then in terms of the personality spread, we also had the personalities evenly distributed within each treatment and sex, as you can see in the tables here. So starting off with the actual treatment effect first, just to give you an overall picture of what we were seeing. So this is the frequency of behavior across the different treatment types. So if we look at the extra space treatment, we can see that this treatment facilitated the greatest amount of social play and locomotor play. which is what we expected. And then in terms of the toy treatment, that's where we saw the highest level of object play, again, to be expected. And then in the commingling treatment, we saw the highest level of aggression. So in comparison to what you see here, we didn't, the control treatment and the straw treatment really only facilitated low to intermediate levels of behavior compared to the other treatments. So now move into the effect of personality and the interaction that that had with the environment. So this is the all of the treatments spread across the different personalities, but we really only did see significant differences within the straw and the toy treatments. So let's just focus on that for a minute. So if we look at the straw and toy, we see that the passive piglets had a higher level of both social and object play in both treatments. And then in the toy treatment, we also saw that those passive piglets had higher locomotion levels. So locomotion play behavior was expressed to a higher level. And then in contrast to that, the proactive piglets in that toy treatment had a higher level of aggression. So again, in this case, we didn't see any differences between personality and the control, the extra space, and the commingled treatment. So just to bring that together and to conclude, because we saw the highest levels of expression of all play types in passive piglets in that straw and toy treatment, that does actually reflect what we see in the literature in terms of how that personality is described. So that reflects that behavioral flexibility and the responsiveness to the changes in environment that they show. So in our case, enrichment and novelty that were provided. But because we saw those higher expression levels of plays, that also suggests those piglets were actually bolder and more active, which doesn't align with what we see in how that personality is described. So if we refer to that figure there, you can see that passive piglets are usually described as shy and inactive and less explorative than the proactive piglets. So it doesn't align with our results. And that's also reflected in the higher levels of play, locomotor play that we saw. So then on the other hand, the proactive piglets at the lower levels of play here, again, this does align with the literature and what we see there. So it reflects a very transient response that that personality type has to novelty and changes in the environment. And so that is perhaps suggesting to us that that personality type needed even more novelty to remain stimulated and to really satisfy their explorative motivations. And we also saw more aggression in the toy treatment in those proactive piglets. So here we are speculating that perhaps there was resource guarding in relation to those toy objects, but we can't actually confirm that because we didn't measure the context of the aggression. So because we saw that the extra space environment facilitated the greatest amount and variety of play types, and that this happened regardless of personality with no increase in aggression, as we saw in the commingled treatment, we say at this point that this is perhaps the better option to support the natural play behavior development in our study. And that is not to say that we shouldn't provide pigs with enrichment in the form of straw or toys. I'm just saying that within this study, this particular environment seemed to best cater to both personality types. And I suppose it's important to look deeper into how do we support those proactive and also passive piglets to express same levels of play behavior when objects such as toys or straw are present, so that they can both use them to the best of their ability and benefit from them. So that's me. Thanks to all the funders and thanks to the team.